Welcome to week 28, everybody. 1AC, after you do attendance, you're going to read the poem Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins. You'll read and do the paraphrase activity, paraphrasing the poem to identify the meaning of the figurative language, including similes and metaphors, and determine the central idea. 3BD, you will also do Introduction to Poetry after you do the vocab pictures in your pod. So I'll explain the intro to poetry first, and since each class is a little different, then I'll go from there. So you're going to read Intro to Poetry. At the top of slide 6, you'll see a link. That link brings you to a reading of Intro to Poetry by the author Billy Collins. Think about, as you listen the first time, who is the speaker of the poem and who is the they or them the speaker refers to. And that's just going to help clarify. So the speaker is a voice that addresses the reader. Authors use speakers to create and express ideas or to tell a story from a specific point of view. So like when you're reading a short story or a novel, the narrator is the person who tells the story, the speaker is the person who tells the poem. And that's important to know because sometimes the speaker is the same as the author and sometimes it is different. So you need to be able to distinguish between the two. After you listen to the poem, you're going to complete the paraphrasing activity. So the poem as you listen is on the left side of this activity, so you might want to have it up as you listen. And then in the right-hand column, you're going to paraphrase the poem with a focus on identifying the meaning of the figurative language in the poem. So there are 7 stanzas in Introduction to Poetry, and each of them has either a simile or a metaphor. So you want to try to identify what is the meaning of each simile and metaphor. And then at the bottom, after you've paraphrased each simile or metaphor, you're going to answer the question, what is the purpose of reading poetry according to the author? So let me return to the slides and just give you an example. And you can copy paste my paraphrase material for stanza 1 into your document if you want, and then it'll be done for you. But when you're paraphrasing, it's a little different from putting things in your own words because you have to keep it from the same point of view and tense as the original poem in this case. So the first stanza says, I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide. And you see in my paraphrase, I also start with, I asked the readers of poetry. So I'm paraphrasing that, the word them. The them is the readers of poetry, to take the poem. So you see that there are some words still repeated, but your big task is to interpret that simile. So, and hold it up to the light like a color slide. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, I have a picture of a color slide. I don't know how many of you have seen color slides because it's kind of like a dated thing that maybe we don't see as much anymore now that we have cell phones and digital cameras. But a color slide is like a slide of a photo that you would put into a projector, and the light is projected through the image, and then you could see it like on a screen. So in my head, when I picture this color slide and I'm comparing it to poetry, I'm thinking this is a simile comparing looking at a poem to looking through a color slide. If I was looking through a color slide, I would be looking at the full picture for its beauty. So my paraphrased material says, I asked the readers of poetry to take the poem and, hold it up like a color slide, or try to appreciate the beauty of the words like you would look for the beauty of a picture in a color slide. So I have a clear interpretation of that simile, what's being compared, the poem, and the color slide, and then what does it mean that you need to appreciate the beauty of the words. So you'll do each stanza of that on your own for the last 6 stanzas. And when you've completed that, you'll do the central idea statement at the bottom. There is a rubric here for the full 5 points. You just need an accurate and precise paraphrasing of the original text and a well-reasoned central idea. So it'll be a quick assessment for me. For 1AC, you are starting with that. And then you are moving on to Vocab 5. So Vocab 5 is in the Week 28 modules. It's the same instructions as you have had all year for your vocabulary. So you get Vocab 5. Your words are benevolent and resilient. Benevolent means well-meaning and kind or charitable. Resilient means able to withstand or recover from difficult conditions or situations. So like you've been learning virtually all year, but you are resilient. You still turn your work in on time and finish it to the best of your ability. Most of you. So for 1 to 5, you're going to read the statement. So for example, the first one says, a former bully decides to start an anti-bullying campaign at school. In the blank, you're going to write if that is benevolent or resilient, an example of benevolence or resilience. And then you're going to explain why you chose benevolent or resilient. Because for some of them, it could be an example of both. So what do you think is the best choice and why? On the next page, you have review of previous vocab words, and it is fill in the blank. So you don't need to write anything in complete sentences. You just need to fill in the blank. And when you're done, submit. For my 3B dears, we are actually starting with the vocab pictures Nearpod and then moving on to the intro to poetry. So the vocab pictures Nearpod, you can get to the Nearpod by going to join.nearpod.com and entering this code RB5LQ. And I'm just going to go to Nearpod now and just show you the directions so you understand. Where are we? Vocab pictures. Preview. So vocab pictures is a really fun activity we usually do in class as a group, but since you're home, I did it on the Nearpod, and it worked out really well in class. I thought it was a lot of fun. So on each slide, you're going to be given a picture by me. I'm superbly artistic, so you're welcome for these drawings. You'll also be given vocab words we have studied this year with their definitions. Now here are your directions. In order to show understanding of the vocab, you're going to place at least 3 of the vocab words on each picture with an explanation. You should place your explanation on the visual closest to what you were trying to explain, and you're going to see my example on the next slide. So, at the top it says, this is obviously a picture of a person at a campsite adding a log to the fire. The intruder skunk is really going to mess with these relaxing vibes. So you have a skunk over here, he or she putting a log on the fire, and a campsite. So this is the tent, obviously. You're going to place 3 words with explanation on the picture where it most makes sense to convey meaning. So if you notice this little arrow, if you click on it, you also see I have myriad of stars in the sky. So I have my vocab word. I just chose to write sentences because that's the best way I could explain. So right near the stars, I wrote there are myriad stars in the sky. And then if you need those words to come back down so you can see them, I've given you on each slide about 5 or 6 of our 10 vocabulary words, and I want you to put those on the picture. So for the first one, you'll add another 3 sentences where it most makes sense. And then there are 4 slides, so you'll do that for each slide using the vocab words. Okay, and that is all for the 4th and the 5th.